A veteran inherited a worthless island. His German Shepherd discovered a secret worth $14.2 million. What could be hidden on an island everyone believed had no value? Why did a loyal German Shepherd become the key to uncovering a mystery connected to this unexpected inheritance? Welcome, friends, and thank you for joining us for another emotional journey filled with hope, loyalty, and life-changing discoveries. If you enjoy inspiring stories about courage, friendship, and the special bond between humans and animals, please subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications so you never miss a meaningful story. We truly appreciate your support and the time you spend with us. Before we begin, tell us where in the world you are watching from and what time it is there right now. Now let us begin the story. Everyone said the island was worthless, but one German Shepherd knew there was something waiting beneath the silence. Michael Carter never expected a forgotten piece of land in the middle of the ocean to become the beginning of a new chapter in his life. The letter arrived on a cold morning, carrying news that felt almost like a mistake. A distant relative he barely knew had left him an island off the coast of Maine. No buildings, no businesses, no clear value, just waves, rocks, and years of abandonment. To everyone around him, it was a burden disguised as an inheritance. To Michael, it was simply a question that needed an answer. After decades of serving in the military, Michael had learned one thing: never ignore something that feels unfinished. He packed a small bag, gathered his supplies, and brought the one companion who had stayed beside him through every difficult season of life. Ranger, his German Shepherd, watched quietly from the passenger seat as the boat moved across the calm morning water. The island appeared smaller than Michael imagined. Gray rocks lined the shore, and tall grass moved gently in the coastal wind. There was no sign that anyone had cared for this place in years. The wooden dock was weathered. The old storage shed stood empty. Even the birds seemed to pass over it without stopping. Michael stepped onto the island and felt a strange mixture of disappointment and curiosity. He understood why people called it worthless, but something about the place felt different. Ranger seemed to notice it too. The German Shepherd walked slowly across the land, stopping often, looking toward areas that seemed ordinary to Michael. "What are you finding, boy?" Michael whispered with a small smile. Ranger did not answer, of course. He simply continued forward, following instincts that Michael could not understand. As the afternoon sun moved lower, Michael explored the remains of the island. He found old wooden posts, broken stone paths, and pieces of a history that seemed forgotten. Every discovery raised more questions. Why would someone leave this island behind? Why was it never developed? And why had his relative chosen him to inherit it? That evening, Michael sat near the shoreline while Ranger rested beside him. The ocean reflected the fading light, and for a moment, the veteran felt something he had not felt in years: peace. He had spent much of his life following orders, protecting others, and carrying responsibilities most people never saw. After returning home, he often wondered what purpose looked like in a quieter life. Maybe this island was not about what it could provide. Maybe it was about what it could reveal. The next morning, Ranger began exploring again. The German Shepherd moved toward an area near a group of large stones at the edge of the island. He stopped, looked back at Michael, and waited. It was not fear. It was not confusion. It was almost as if Ranger wanted him to follow. Michael walked closer and noticed something unusual. Hidden beneath layers of dirt and time was a small piece of metal that did not belong to the natural landscape. He brushed away the soil carefully and discovered an old symbol carved into its surface. A symbol he had never seen before. Michael looked at Ranger, then back at the mysterious object in his hand. The island everyone called worthless had just given him its first secret. And for the first time since receiving the inheritance, Michael wondered if this forgotten place had been waiting for him all along. The island had given Michael Carter one secret, but it was the silence around that secret that made him wonder what else was waiting to be found. The old metal piece he discovered near the stones rested in his hand as the evening wind moved across the empty shore. Ranger stood beside him, watching quietly, almost as if the German Shepherd understood that something important had just begun. Michael returned to the small cabin on the island and studied the strange symbol under the soft glow of a lantern. It was not a treasure map. It was not a name he recognized. It was simply a mark from another time, a piece of a story that someone had tried to leave behind. The next morning, Michael woke before sunrise. Years in the military had taught him to rise early, even when there was nowhere he needed to be. He prepared coffee, checked his supplies, and looked across the island with a different feeling. The place no longer felt empty. It felt like a question. Ranger moved ahead along the shoreline, carefully exploring areas they had not visited before. The German shepherd stopped near an old wooden structure hidden behind tall grass. Michael walked closer and noticed faded markings carved into one of the support beams. They were almost impossible to see unless someone knew where to look. He took a photograph and carefully wrote down every detail. The more he searched, the more he realized the island was not abandoned by accident. There were signs of someone who had once cared deeply about this place. Later that afternoon, Michael found an old storage room beneath the remains of the structure. Inside were only a few items covered by years of dust. A rusted lantern, several empty wooden boxes, and a small journal with pages that had survived the passage of time. Michael opened it carefully, unsure if the words inside would reveal anything meaningful. The handwriting was difficult to read, but one sentence immediately caught his attention. Some things are hidden because they are forgotten. Others are hidden because they are waiting for the right person. Michael paused. The words stayed with him. He had spent years believing that life after the military would simply be about moving forward. But this island was pulling him back towards something he could not explain. Ranger sat beside him while he continued reading. The journal mentioned the island's previous owner, a man who had spent decades protecting a secret connected to the land. But the pages were incomplete. Important sections were missing, leaving more questions than answers. Who was this person? What was he protecting? And why did Michael inherit the island instead of someone else? As the sun began to set, Michael walked along the beach with Ranger beside him. He thought about all the people who had called the island worthless. Maybe they were right about one thing. It did not have obvious value. There were no buildings, no businesses, and no easy way to make money from it. But value was not always something that could be measured from the outside. The next day, Michael decided to contact someone who might know more about the island's history. He searched through old records and found a local historian named Evelyn Brooks, a woman known for researching forgotten places along the Maine coast. Before leaving the island temporarily, Michael looked back one more time. Ranger stood near the old stones where everything began, staring toward the land as if waiting for the next discovery. Michael smiled softly. I guess you found something here before I did. The German shepherd wagged his tail and stayed close. Neither of them knew what the island would reveal next. But they both knew one thing. The journey was only beginning. The old journal changed everything Michael Carter thought he knew about the island. What once looked like a forgotten piece of land was slowly becoming a place filled with memories, unanswered questions, and a story waiting to be uncovered. Before leaving the island to search for answers, Michael carefully packed the journal and the strange metal symbol he had found with Ranger. The German shepherd stayed close, watching every movement as if he understood that their journey had taken a new direction. A few hours later, Michael arrived back on the mainland and began searching through local records. It did not take long before he found the name he was looking for. Evelyn Brooks was known throughout the coastal communities of Maine as someone who dedicated her life to preserving forgotten histories. She had studied old properties, family records, and stories that most people had stopped remembering. When Michael explained the island and showed her the symbol, Evelyn became quiet. She recognized the mark. It belonged to a family that had once owned the land more than 70 years earlier. That island was never just empty land, Evelyn said softly. There was a reason people stopped talking about it. Michael listened carefully as she explained what she knew. The island had once been connected to a wealthy family who built a private retreat there during a different era. But over time, the property disappeared from public attention. Records became incomplete. Names faded away. The island became nothing more than a forgotten location on old maps. Yet Evelyn noticed something unusual. The symbol Michael discovered was not a family decoration. It represented something much more important. It was a mark used to identify protected belongings and important documents. Michael looked at Ranger, who sat calmly beside him. The German shepherd had somehow found the first piece of a story that had remained hidden for decades. Together, Michael and Evelyn returned to the island the following morning. The weather was calm, and the ocean reflected the soft morning light as their boat approached the shore. This time, the island felt different. It no longer seemed abandoned. It felt like a place holding its breath, waiting for someone to finally listen. Evelyn examined the old structures, while Michael continued searching near the area where Ranger had first discovered the symbol. As they explored, they found more signs that someone had carefully preserved parts of the island's history. Beneath an old wooden platform, Evelyn discovered a small compartment hidden beneath the boards. Inside was a collection of photographs and handwritten notes. The images showed the island many years earlier. There were gardens, buildings, and people who clearly cared deeply about the land. Michael studied the photographs and noticed one person appeared in several of them. The man looked familiar, but Michael could not understand why. Evelyn examined the picture closely and found the answer written on the back. It was the name of the island's previous owner, a name connected to the inheritance Michael had received. The discovery raised even more questions. Why had the island been left to him? Why was so much history hidden away? And what secret was valuable enough for someone to protect for so many years? That evening, Michael sat outside the old cabin with Ranger resting beside him. The veteran looked across the island and realized something important. He had arrived searching for the value of the property, but he was discovering something much deeper. This was not just about land. It was about a story that had been waiting for the right person to continue it. Ranger lifted his head as a gentle wind moved across the shore. Michael smiled quietly. The German shepherd had found the first clue, but now they were beginning to understand that the biggest discovery was still ahead. The hidden photographs changed the way Michael Carter looked at the island. What seemed like a forgotten piece of land was slowly becoming a doorway into a story that had been silent for generations. The more he learned, the more he realized that the island was never truly abandoned. It had simply been waiting for someone willing to listen. The next morning, Michael and Ranger returned to the old storage room with Evelyn Brooks. The historian carefully examined every photograph, every note, and every small detail left behind. She moved slowly, treating each item like a piece of a fragile memory. This family protected something important, Evelyn said quietly. But they also wanted someone in the future to understand why. Michael looked at the old journal again. The missing pages bothered him. Someone had removed the most important parts of the story, leaving only enough information to create questions. Ranger walked around the room, sniffing the corners and exploring areas they had not noticed before. The German shepherd stopped near a wooden wall covered by old shelves. He looked back at Michael and remained there. Michael followed him and moved the shelves carefully aside. Behind them was a narrow space hidden inside the wall. It was not large, but it was clearly built with a purpose. Inside was a small wooden box wrapped in protective cloth. Evelyn held her breath as Michael opened it. The box contained several documents, a hand-drawn map of the island, and a letter sealed with the same symbol they had discovered earlier. The letter was dated decades ago. Michael carefully unfolded the paper and began reading. The words revealed that the previous owner of the island had known its true value, but not because of money. The island held a family legacy that had been protected for years. It contained records, personal belongings, and information that connected generations of people who had once called the island home. Evelyn studied the map and noticed something unusual. A marked location near the center of the island had never appeared on any public records. It was a place hidden from ordinary visitors. Michael felt a familiar feeling return. It was the same feeling he had when Ranger first discovered the metal symbol. Something was guiding them deeper into the mystery. Later that afternoon, they followed the map toward the marked location. The path was difficult to recognize because nature had slowly covered it over the years. Trees had grown taller. Grass had spread across the ground. Time had hidden the trail, but not completely. Ranger moved ahead, walking carefully and occasionally looking back to make sure Michael was following. Near the center of the island, they found the remains of an old foundation. It was different from the other structures they had seen. This place had been designed with more care. The stones were arranged carefully, and the location offered a clear view of the ocean. Evelyn looked around with amazement. This was not just a retreat, she said. This was a place where someone planned to preserve something important. Michael stood quietly, looking across the water. He thought about his own life and how many chapters people never see. As a veteran, he understood what it meant to carry memories that stayed hidden beneath the surface. Maybe this island was the same. Maybe it carried stories that needed someone patient enough to uncover them. As the sun began to disappear, Ranger sat beside the old foundation. Michael placed a hand gently on the German shepherd's back and smiled. The dog had not found a treasure chest filled with gold. He had found something much more valuable. He had found the path to a forgotten truth. But as Michael looked at the documents in his hand, he realized they were only the beginning. The island still had more secrets waiting beneath its quiet surface. The island was no longer a forgotten place in Michael Carter's eyes. Every hidden mark, every old document, and every discovery with Ranger revealed a deeper story waiting to be understood. But the closer Michael came to the truth, the more he realized that the greatest secret was not something buried beneath the ground. It was the reason someone had spent so many years protecting it. The next morning, Michael, Evelyn Brooks, and Ranger returned to the old foundation near the center of the island. The hand-drawn map they found inside the hidden box showed one final location marked with the same mysterious symbol. It was not far from where they stood, but years of nature covering the land made the path almost impossible to recognize. Ranger moved ahead slowly, his ears alert and his eyes focused. The German Shepherd stopped near a section of ground covered with wild grass and fallen branches. Michael carefully cleared the area and noticed a small stone structure hidden beneath the surface. It was not a treasure chest or anything that looked valuable from the outside. It was simply a carefully built space that someone had wanted to protect. Inside was another collection of items. There were old letters, family records, and a small leather notebook. Evelyn carefully opened the notebook and began reading the pages. The writing belonged to the original owner of the island. As she read, the story of the land began to come together. The island had been passed down through generations, but each owner had made the same promise. They were not meant to use it for personal gain. They were meant to preserve what was inside and wait for someone who truly understood its meaning. Michael looked at the words again and felt something familiar. It reminded him of the responsibilities he carried during his years of service. Some things were not valuable because of what they could provide. They were valuable because of what they represented. The notebook revealed that the island contained a collection of rare historical documents and preserved family assets that had been carefully maintained over decades. Evelyn explained that the combination of these items could make the discovery worth millions of dollars. But she also noticed something important. The original owner had written that money was never supposed to be the final purpose. There was a message hidden within the records, a message meant for whoever discovered the island's truth. Michael continued reading the notebook late into the afternoon. The final pages described a dream the previous owner had for the island. He wanted it to become a place where stories were remembered, where history was respected, and where people could understand the importance of protecting the past. Michael looked across the quiet shoreline and thought about how different everything felt from the day he first arrived. He had come expecting an empty island. Instead, he found a responsibility. Ranger sat beside him as the ocean breeze moved gently across the land. The German Shepherd had led him to the first clue, but Michael understood that the journey was never only about finding something hidden. It was about discovering why it had been hidden. That evening, Evelyn reviewed the documents one more time. She noticed one final detail that changed everything. A value estimate connected to the preserved assets showed a number far beyond what anyone had imagined. The island that everyone believed was worthless carried a secret worth millions. But as Michael listened to Evelyn explain the discovery, he looked down at Ranger and smiled. The dog had never been searching for money. He had been searching for a story. And now, Michael knew the island still had one final chapter waiting to be revealed. The number written in the old documents changed the atmosphere on the island completely. For decades, people had looked at this place as nothing more than forgotten land surrounded by water. But now Michael Carter stood there knowing that beneath the quiet surface was a story worth millions of dollars and a legacy that someone had protected for generations. Still, the value of the discovery was not what stayed on his mind. He kept thinking about the words written by the previous owner. The island was never meant to simply create wealth. It was meant to preserve something meaningful. The following days were spent carefully organizing every document found inside the hidden rooms. Michael and Evelyn worked side by side, creating a timeline of the island's history. Each photograph, each letter, and each record revealed another piece of a family story that had almost disappeared. Ranger remained close throughout the process, quietly observing as if he had always belonged there. Evelyn explained that the preserved assets connected to the island included rare historical collections, valuable records, and items that had gained significant importance over time. Together, their estimated value reached approximately $14.2 million. Michael listened carefully, but his expression did not change. After years in the military, he had learned that numbers alone never told the whole story. "Someone spent a lifetime protecting this," he said. "That has to mean more than a price." Evelyn looked at him and smiled. She realized Michael understood something many people might have missed. The island was not valuable because of what it could give someone. It was valuable because of what it represented. That evening, Michael walked with Ranger along the shoreline. The ocean was calm, and the orange light of sunset reflected across the water. He thought about the first day he arrived, when he expected to find nothing. He remembered how everyone told him the inheritance was useless. But now, standing on the same land, he saw things differently. The island had not been empty. It had been waiting. The next morning, Michael received a message from a legal representative connected to the previous owner's family. There was one final part of the inheritance that had not yet been explained. A personal letter had been kept separate from the other documents, and it was intended only for the person who completed the discovery. Michael felt a familiar curiosity return. Once again, the island was offering another question before giving an answer. He opened the letter carefully. The handwriting was from the same person who created the journal. The message was simple but powerful. It explained that the island had been passed from one person to another because each owner believed that the right person would eventually arrive. Someone who would understand that a legacy was not about possession. It was about responsibility. Michael read the letter several times. He thought about his years serving others, about the quiet moments after returning home, and about searching for a new purpose. Maybe this island had found him at the exact moment he needed it most. Ranger rested beside him as he finished reading. The German Shepherd had been the first to notice something hidden, but now Michael understood why. Ranger had not discovered the island's secret because of luck. He had discovered it because he followed something that humans had ignored. A feeling, a connection, a reason to keep searching. As the sun disappeared behind the horizon, Michael looked across the island with a different kind of respect. The place that everyone called worthless had given him something far greater than money. It had given him a mission. But as he looked at the final pages of the documents, one question remained. The island's secret had been revealed, but the reason Michael had been chosen was still waiting to be uncovered. Michael Carter had spent years following orders, protecting others, and carrying responsibilities that most people never saw. But standing on the island with Ranger beside him, he realized he had been given a different kind of mission. This was not about completing a duty. It was about discovering the meaning behind a legacy that had been waiting for the right person. The days that followed were filled with careful research and quiet moments of reflection. Michael and Evelyn continued studying the documents found inside the hidden rooms, searching for answers about the previous owner and the reason the island had been left behind. The more they learned, the clearer the message became. The island was never meant to belong to someone who only wanted wealth. It was meant for someone who understood responsibility. Evelyn discovered additional records that explained how the original owner had created a system to preserve the island's history. Every generation had been instructed to protect the documents, maintain the land, and wait until someone with the right values arrived. Michael found himself thinking about his own journey. After leaving the military, he had struggled with the question many veterans quietly carry. What comes next when the mission is over? For a long time, he believed purpose was something found only through service. But now, on this quiet island, he began to understand that purpose could appear in unexpected places. Ranger remained his constant companion throughout every discovery. The German Shepherd walked beside him during every search, rested near him during every conversation, and seemed to bring calm to moments filled with uncertainty. Michael often wondered how different the journey would have been without him. One afternoon, while reviewing the old map again, Evelyn noticed a small detail that had been overlooked. There was a section of the island marked with a different symbol. It was not connected to the hidden rooms or the preserved documents. It appeared to represent something personal. They followed the marking with Ranger leading the way. The path brought them to a quiet area overlooking the ocean. There, they discovered a simple stone marker with a message carved into its surface. It was not a warning. It was not a claim of ownership. It was a reminder. The words spoke about gratitude, kindness, and the importance of leaving something meaningful behind for others. Michael stood there silently for several minutes. He thought about all the people who had judged the island without ever knowing its story. They saw empty land. They saw no immediate value. They never saw the memories, the sacrifices, and the care hidden beneath the surface. That evening, Michael and Evelyn reviewed the final documents. Connected to the island's assets. The estimated value remained extraordinary, but Michael felt something changing inside him. The money was no longer the center of the story. The discovery had become something much bigger. It had connected the past with the present. It had given forgotten people a voice again. It had given Michael a reason to look forward instead of only looking back. As the sun lowered over the water, Michael sat beside Ranger near the shoreline. The German shepherd rested his head gently against Michael's leg, just as he had done many times before. In that quiet moment, Michael realized something important. He had arrived on the island thinking he was the one who had inherited something valuable. But maybe the island had given him something even greater. It had given him direction. It had given him connection. And it had shown him that sometimes the most important discoveries are not hidden in the ground. They are hidden within the parts of ourselves we thought we had already lost. But the final piece of the island's story was still waiting. A name from the past had appeared in the records, a name connected to why Michael had been chosen. And finding that answer would reveal the deepest secret of all. The name hidden inside the old records finally gave Michael Carter the answer he had been searching for. It was not a stranger's name. It was connected to his own family history in a way he never expected. The island had not chosen him because he was looking for wealth. It had chosen him because he was connected to the promise that had protected it for generations. Michael sat quietly inside the old foundation, holding the document that changed everything. The handwriting belonged to the original owner of the island, but the final pages mentioned someone from Michael's past. A relative he barely knew had once helped protect the island's legacy. The connection had been lost over time, hidden behind years of silence and forgotten memories. Evelyn carefully explained that the previous owner had created a special inheritance plan. The island would only pass to someone who understood that its true value was not measured by money. It needed someone who respected history, protected memories, and cared about something greater than personal gain. Michael looked around the room and thought about how unexpected the journey had been. He never imagined that a place everyone dismissed as worthless would lead him back to a part of his own story. Ranger rested nearby, watching him with the same calm expression he had shown since the beginning. The German shepherd had been there through every discovery, every question, and every moment when the answer seemed just out of reach. That afternoon, Michael decided to visit another area marked on the old map. It was a small garden near the northern side of the island that had not appeared on any modern records. When they arrived, they found a place that time had almost forgotten. Wild plants had grown around the area, but beneath them were signs of careful design. Stone paths, small wooden structures, and preserved plants showed that someone had spent years creating a peaceful place. Evelyn examined the area and realized what it was. It was a living memory of the family who once cared for the island. The garden was not built for recognition. It was built as a quiet reminder that every life leaves something behind. Michael walked slowly through the area, feeling a sense of connection he had not experienced in years. He thought about the people who had served beside him, the friends he had lost touch with, and the moments that shaped who he became. The island was teaching him that memories were not meant to be locked away. They were meant to be honored. As evening approached, Michael found another small envelope hidden beneath a stone near the center of the garden. Inside was a final letter written by the previous owner. The message was addressed to whoever discovered the island's complete story. The words were simple. They said that the greatest inheritance was not land, documents, or financial value. The greatest inheritance was the opportunity to continue something meaningful. Michael read the letter as the ocean breeze moved through the trees around him. For the first time in a long while, he felt peace about the future. He no longer wondered why he had received the island. He understood that some paths are not discovered by searching. Some paths appear when someone is ready to follow them. Ranger walked beside him as they returned to the main house. The German shepherd looked back toward the garden one last time, almost as if he knew they had completed an important part of the journey. But Michael knew there was still one thing left to do. The island's secret had been revealed. The family story had been restored. Now, he had to decide what kind of future this place deserved. Michael Carter stood on the shoreline of the island he once believed had no value, watching the morning light move across the water. Months earlier, he had inherited a forgotten piece of land that most people considered worthless. But now, after uncovering its hidden history, he understood that some treasures are not measured by what they can buy. They are measured by what they can restore. The final documents revealed the full purpose of the island. It was never created to make someone wealthy. It was created to preserve memories, protect history, and remind future generations that kindness can leave a mark long after people are gone. Michael knew he had a decision to make. He could sell the island and walk away with a fortune, or he could honor the promise left behind. He looked at Ranger beside him and felt the answer becoming clear. The German shepherd had been there from the beginning, guiding him toward every hidden discovery. Without Ranger, the story might have remained buried forever. Michael contacted Evelyn Brooks and shared his thoughts. Together, they discussed a plan that respected the island's legacy. Instead of turning the property into something that would erase its history, they decided to preserve it as a place where people could learn, remember, and reconnect with the past. The idea was not about creating attention or gaining recognition. It was about protecting something meaningful. Over the following weeks, Michael worked carefully to organize the documents and prepare the island for its next chapter. Local historians became interested in the discovery, and more information about the original family began to emerge. People who had once ignored the island started to understand its importance. The place they once called empty became a symbol of patience, hope, and the quiet power of preserving memories. One afternoon, Michael returned to the old garden where he found the final letter. Ranger walked beside him, moving slowly through the familiar path. The garden had become their favorite place on the island. It was peaceful, untouched, and full of reminders that every life leaves something behind. Michael sat near the stone marker and read the words one more time. He realized the message was not only meant for him. It was meant for anyone who believed that forgotten things no longer mattered. The island had proven the opposite. Forgotten things sometimes hold the deepest stories. As time passed, Michael began sharing the island's history with others. Veterans, families, and visitors came to see the preserved land and learn about the people who protected it. Every person who arrived left with the same feeling Michael had when he first discovered the hidden rooms. A feeling that something important had been waiting to be found. Ranger became a familiar presence to everyone who visited. The German shepherd who once simply followed a scent across an old island had become part of its story. People often smiled when they heard how a dog had discovered the first clue that changed everything. But Michael knew Ranger did more than find a hidden place. He reminded everyone that paying attention matters, that loyalty matters, that even the smallest act of curiosity can lead to something extraordinary. Years later, Michael still walked the shoreline with Ranger beside him. The island was no longer known as worthless land. It became a place of remembrance, gratitude, and connection. Michael never forgot the first moment he stepped onto the island, when he believed he had inherited nothing. Looking back, he understood the truth. He had not inherited an island. He had inherited a story. And sometimes, the greatest treasures are not the ones hidden beneath the earth. They are the ones that help us find our way back to ourselves.